Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties from the Michigan Association of Counties.
Let's just talk about the background of these lawsuits. So 2017, there were over 2,000 federal lawsuits that have been filed by government entities such as cities, townships, counties, and Michigan was right at the forefront of those. So among those defendants that were filed against, there were opioid distributors, manufacturers, pharmacies, all kinds of people. And so there were an awful lot of lawsuits back in 2017, and then it just kind of grew from there. So when there's a lot of lawsuits like that, oftentimes they get combined into a federal judicial construct. It's put together by a judicial panel, and it's called a multi-district litigation. And what it does is it takes all those cases and it consolidates them under one judge for purposes of like things that happen before a trial, so that you can, have all the same things happen in each case. It was consolidated under one judge in the Northern District of Ohio. And oftentimes in an MDL, it kind of becomes a pressure cooker because the judge and other folks can kind of put pressure on both parties to settle. So in 2019, after receiving some pressure from the judge, we started to have our first settlement. It was three of the nation's largest drug distributors. It was Cardinal, McKesson, and AmerisourceBergen. And then we had an opioid manufacturer, Janssen. They had also agreed to a settlement. And so in 2021, we started signing onto these settlements, and that was our first one. So over that time period, since 2021, we've really pressed forward and had a number of other settlements. I think in total, we're up to about 12 or 13 with everything in tow. But today we're just talking about a smaller set of those. The process that happened with the distributors and Janssen has been replicated with pharmaceutical companies and others and pharmacies. So we're talking about Allergan, Teva, CVS, Walmart, Walgreens, a group of generic manufacturers that we'll talk about in just a bit, and Purdue Pharmaceutical, which is a settlement that's going on right now that we'll talk about in a little bit as well. So that's kind of the background for where these settlements started. So we'll talk a little bit more about what's being settled. As a government, you're releasing certain legal claims that you would have against these defendants related to opioids. In exchange for releasing those claims, the defendants are going to do certain things, which is known as injunctive relief, and they're going to pay them certain amounts of money. Those are monetary payments. So I expect that over the last bit, starting in 2023, you've probably noticed those monetary payments coming in as they're paid directly to any participating subdivision. So over all of these settlements that we're talking about, Michigan governments are slated to receive. Oh, my slides aren't showing apparently, and that's a bummer. Hang on, let's see what's going on. Is that better, Amy?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, there we go. I'm sorry. Here, it was just text. So, I mean, it wasn't anything thrilling with graphics or anything like that. Anyway, cool. I'm glad that we could get that straightened out. Thanks for saying something. So over the course of all of these settlements, Michigan governments, that means Michigan, the state of Michigan. It also means Michigan's local governments that are participating in these are slated to receive about $1.8 billion over the course of time. So that is until about 2040. It might be a little bit longer depending on how these next few settlements shake out, but 2040 is about the mark. The way that we have it structured here in Michigan is that 50% of the settlement payments are paid directly to county and local governments and in accordance with the allocation percentage that they have. And then 50% of the payments are paid to the state. Allocation percentages for local governments are found in Exhibit A of our Michigan State-subdivision Agreement for allocation of opioid settlement agreements. And the funds that you receive are to be used for opioid remediation, with 70% of those funds to be used for future opioid remediation, meaning things that are going to solve the opioid problem in the future, like or future or forward looking. So thankfully, we have Exhibit E that sort of outlines the allowable uses for settlement funds, but it's not an exclusive list. It's a lot of really great ideas. And as you likely know, the distribution of funds began in January of 2023. So I just wanted to quickly go over injunctive relief, just an idea, to let you know, like what are we talking about when we talk about injunctive relief? Because it's an important part that we often don't talk about quite very much. But injunctive relief, these are some examples of what companies have agreed to do. They have agreed to stop selling and manufacturing opioids, stop promoting them, stop providing financial incentives, stop lobbying at every level of government, meaning that includes federal, state, local, and even regulatory provisions, which is huge because as I know that regulations impact a lot of things, and that's a place where not everybody's always paying attention. So injunctive relief is a big portion of what goes on in this as well. Though mainly we just sort of focus on monetary payments, and that's okay. We do get updated reports on whether the injunctive relief is going okay, and I can say that for the most part, the injunctive relief is working and going well. So on monetary relief, there's different payment amounts varying depending on the settlement. Some settlements are larger, some are smaller. So for example, the distributor settlement was our largest, and I believe the generic manufacturer settlement will be the smallest. But I want to sort of talk about the structure of these, just as sort of a refresher and for anyone who's not familiar with them. The way that a lot of these settlements work, all of them work. This is the way all of them work. Though the numbers are slightly tweaked in each one, is that there's a base payment and then there's an incentive payment. So the base payment is what you get basically no matter what. And then depending on how much local government participation you have, that determines what incentive bracket that you end up in. So if you're able to achieve incentive A, which Michigan has for each settlement that we have had, you receive as much money as you can. That's the maximum amount. If you don't have as much local government participation, you could be in incentive B or incentive C. And then incentive D here is something that happens after a number of years. It happens when there hasn't been any litigation after about 6 years of settlements. It varies a little bit depending on the settlement, and some settlements don't always have incentive D, but it's really just it's sort of a kicker if after so many years you don't have any litigation. So this is just a basic structure of how these settlements are. And the important thing to remember is that the more local government participation you have, the higher the incentive you get. So the more money everyone gets. So let's talk a little bit about the Purdue Sackler settlement, which is the one that's going on right now. It's available for sign on right now. And I would encourage all of you to sign on if your local government hasn't yet. Participation packets were sent out on August 7th. Usually what happens is there's one person who's like the designated signer, and then other folks can receive the packets for review and discussion. So if you're a local government and you haven't seen that, or you don't know if somebody received it, please reach out to me and I'm happy to look that information up for you and get your contact information corrected if you need it. Anything you need, really, I'm happy to help. So please reach out if you need any help with participation and sign on. the way that this settlement is structured is it's both Purdue Pharmaceutical, the company, and the Sackler family. This is probably the most complicated of all the settlements we've had so far. And I'll tell you, that's saying something because a lot of these have been very complicated. But this one is particularly complicated because Purdue Pharmaceuticals in a bankruptcy, and then you have a number of different Sackler family members who are responsible for payments in different ways. But the good thing is that it's been distilled down, and we tried to make it as simple as possible. Nationwide, the Purdue and the Sackler family will end up paying about $7.4 billion in this settlement, and Michigan governments are expected to receive about $154 million over 15 years. So
Matt, sorry to break in. We do have a question from the audience that
sure.
relates to the slide. How do we know if we have signed on already?
I can tell you that information. If you tell me the local government, I can tell you if you've signed on or not. But usually, if you're the signer, you have to.
City of Warren.
Sure. Let me look that up in just a minute here. But usually, if you're like the signer, you have to complete the DocuSign package and send it back, and so you would know from there. But if you are not the signer, you really wouldn't have a good way of knowing. But I'm happy to look up any local government you like and tell you. So back to the Sacklers for just a minute here. So in addition to the monetary payments that they're going to be submitting, the Sackler family and Purdue are subject to injunctive relief, like we discussed. Part of that is making more than 30 million documents publicly available in like an online resource. There's a lot of documents out there already, but this is 30 million additional documents. They also have a prohibition on domestic opioid manufacturing, the sale of opioids, and they need to sell their foreign operations. So this is some pretty big things to do with the Sackler family. And I know if you've been following the Purdue settlement at all, you'll know it has a rather storied history, and it's been through a lot. But I'm glad to see it finally reach some resolution. So let's get into talking about our state subdivision agreement here. So we talked a little bit earlier about what it kind of did, or what we touched briefly on it. But I want to try to help everyone understand what this agreement is and what it does. So the way that these settlements are structured is that in it has like a default setup. If you didn't do anything, it would distribute money in a certain way. And the default setup is that 15%, that's 15% of the money would go to local subdivisions, 15% would go to the state, and then 70% would go to like a jointly administered fund. So you don't have to do the default, and most places did not. And Michigan is one of those places. So what we did was we put together a state subdivision agreement, which allocates 50% of settlement payments to a local share, and then 50% of the settlement payments to the state. So if you're a local government, that 50% would be like in a big chunk, and then it would get distributed based on your allocation percentage, the allocation percentage of your local government. So yeah.
Another question coming in, Matt.
Sure.
When settlements started, municipalities are given sample resolution they were required to adopt. Is this no longer the case? I have a new client that says they have never had their governing body approve participation and have never used resolutions. This refers to Hamburg Township in Livingston County. Or wait, no, excuse me, it does not.
Sure.
But the question stands. I'm seeing two messages here. I'm not exactly sure what the.
Yeah, sure. So there's plenty of places that have used resolutions to pass to help them decide whether they want to sign on to that, to a settlement agreement or not. And my understanding is that there are also some who did not do that. It really depends on the local process and what is necessary for settlement sign-ons in that area, really. Some local governments signed a resolution early on to allow them to sign on to whatever settlements they came through for opioids, but that isn't true of everyone. So it's really an individualized thing, and something that you would have to look either at your local government specifically and your process and rules, and see if that's what you need to do. But I can say that it would not be uncommon to need a resolution to sign on. That is pretty typical. So back to talking about the allocation amounts. So allocations, the allocation percentage that an individual local government would get is determined by a nationally used formula, and it's modified by a litigation adjustment inside this agreement. And then, so with that 50% chunk that comes to the local government share, individual local governments would get the amount that is associated with their allocation percentage, right? So if it was $10,000 and your allocation percentage is 1%, you would get 1% of $10,000. Okay, so once you receive that money, the local subdivisions, you decide how they spend it, and within the parameters of the settlement. I mean, that's really what this is about. Is these payments to local governments are direct payments, and you make the decisions about how you spend your money, so long as they're within the parameters of what the settlement requires, that they be used for opioid remediation. So we'll talk a little bit more about opioid remediation in a few minutes. And I can tell you what it is, but I want to talk more about reporting and what some of the updates that we've had are. So we had an update to our state subdivision agreement for the Purdue Sackler settlement and all of the other settlements. So it's in this updated agreement is in the process of ratification now. If you received the participation packet for the Purdue Sackler settlement, you would have received a copy of it. It was included with that participation packet. And to start off, one thing that this updated agreement does is that it combines all the previous agreements that we had down into one document. So you may remember that we had a state subdivision agreement for the distributors in Janssen. We had a state subdivision agreement for CVS, Teva, Allergan, Walmart, and Walgreens. We had one for Kroger. So that was 3 agreements. So if you wanted to reference one, you'd have to know which one that you wanted to reference. So as you know, I think you all know, it can be confusing to have multiple documents like that. Early on in these settlements, it made more sense because we weren't really sure how they would shake out. But now that they're mostly have a shared structure, it makes a lot more sense to have a combined agreement. So all of our previous agreements have been combined into one, and so you'll see that reflected in there. The other big portions are that it, number one, allows local governments to ask the AG's office for generalized guidance about the settlements, the state subdivision agreement, or whether a proposed expenditure would qualify as opioid remediation. So I've sort of truncated the language here a bit, but one thing to know is that it also allows the AG's office to do that on its own too, so that we could issue generalized guidance about any one of these topics if the need arose. So, there's been, sort of common questions about certain things, and those might be topics for generalized guidance. But, if you have questions about whether something qualifies as a opioid remediation, you can reach out and ask us. The next part is that, excuse me, starting in fiscal year 2026, it has the state and some local governments reporting annually about how money has been spent from settlement payments and where, or how much money has been received and where that money has been spent or allocated. I know those seem like pretty basic things, and that's because they are.
Matt,
Yep.
another question on
Sure.
on what to do with the money. Can we endow our funds?
That's a great question. Sounds like one that might be good for generalized guidance. Let me get to that question in just a minute
Okay.
here.
And then follow up to that, are there deadlines to spend or allocate settlement funding?
No. No, there's not. There's not deadlines. No. Okay. So back to that reporting. So as we talked about, it's an annual report about how much you've received and where you've spent it. So that seems pretty basic. We'll talk a little bit more about it in the next slide here. And then lastly, the updated agreement also allows the state and local governments to request additional information about an expenditure or allocation. So let's just say that you see that the state spent money on something and you'd like to know a little bit more about it. You would reach out to the AG's office and you could ask, and we'd try to dig up more info. So these are the big changes that we've had in the updated state subdivision agreement. Did we have a question?
Yes. Will the requirements starting in FY26 require reporting on all funds spent to date, previous years included, or just funds spent starting in FY26?
So it would require, so let me go back a slide here. So the reporting requirements within this this updated agreement would have you start reporting for fiscal year 2026 forward. There isn't a look back in that particular piece. However, I will tell you that the AG's office may be interested in knowing what you have spent previously. So in effect, we may come back and want to know what if you have any information about what you've spent or what you've got previously. So if that helps explain it.
Sure. Follow-up question, can and how can a community pass the funds to their county if they do not want to accept the funds themselves?
Yes. So let me get to that in this next slide here. So this is just a little bit more about reporting here. So we have a template that we will make available. It's an Excel. It'll be an Excel spreadsheet to start off with. We also have a template in the like a exhibit in the updated state subdivision agreement. It's Exhibit F there, and you can just take a look at it if you'd like to see what it looks like. It's very basic though. It's not it's not a whole lot of complicated lines or anything. But I plan to make that into a template spreadsheet that'll be available on the Attorney General's opioid webpage that you can download and use. You can also submit budget documents if those documents contain the information that is needed. And then if you want to assign 100% of your share to other local governments, you can do that. And if you do that, you don't have to report. So the way that you go about doing that is you reach out to the National Settlement Administrator, and I believe they either have a form where you can submit an email telling them who you would like to give your money to, and I believe it needs to be any participating local government. So that would be, it could be your county. It could also be another local government if you wanted, or something like that. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about another upcoming settlement real fast, just to give it a preview, and then I want to get to your questions, whatever more questions or any other questions you might have. Upcoming, we have a settlement with 8 generic manufacturers. I'm expecting it to begin next week. You can see the list of different manufacturers here. These were ones who created and manufactured generic opioids. We would expect that we'll receive 24.5 million over 10 years for this settlement, and it'll be the same structure. You'll get an email with a participation packet, and it's a DocuSign. You can also sign a physical paper, and scan it and email it back too. But please keep an eye out for this the settlement with generic manufacturers, as it might get overshadowed by Purdue, and we're trying to do them both at the same time. So that should be coming, I think, next week. So lastly, I just wanted to get into to talk about a little bit about how to spend the money, because this is a common question that I get, and just to sort of focus on what things mean. So settlement payments have to be used for opioid remediation. They're per the State-subdivision Agreement. Opioid remediation is a defined term in the settlement, which I have the term on the next slide. But it's important to know that it has to be used for opioid remediation. So, and then further, 70% of the settlement money has to be used for future opioid remediation, meaning things that are forward-looking. So Exhibit E is there, which is a great guide. It's not an all exclusive list. There can be other things other than Exhibit E, but it's a really, really good document to reference and use and think about, and see how it can help your local government. But for the definition of opioid remediation, it's right here. So it's the care, treatment, other programs and expenditures, including reimbursement for past such programs, except where the agreement restricts the use of funds. And they have to be designed to, so the expenditures are designed to address the misuse and abuse of opioid products, treat or mitigate opioid use or related disorders, or mitigate other alleged effects of, including on those injured as a result of the opioid epidemic. So Exhibit E provides, in the settlements, it provides that non-exhaustive list of expenditures that qualify. Some qualifying expenditures can include reasonably related administrative expenses, which is a good thing. But this is what, when we talk about opioid remediation, this is what it means. This is the definition from the settlement agreement. So if you wondered, that's what it is. So lastly, for my last slide here, I just have my contact information, any of the associations have my contact information as well. Or if you don't have it, you're welcome to reach out to me in any way that you'd like. You can contact the AG's office, and they'll certainly get you over to me wherever you need to be. So, all right. Well, I was hoping that I could do that in about 30 minutes. It looks like I was maybe just under, maybe. And I am excited to take your questions. Amy, do you have any questions? Well, I think you're muted.
Thank you for all of the background and providing information on the updated agreement, but also just on the settlements as a whole. I do see we have some questions coming in here.
Great.
Let's see. So our first, what determines if a local township will need to report or not? So
it's determined by, we have a list in the State-subdivision Agreement. It is, let me pull up the exhibit number. In that, if you have a copy of that agreement, and if you don't have a copy of that agreement, I'm happy to provide one for you. I don't have it posted anywhere, mostly because it's not ratified yet, but I'm happy to provide one to you if you would like one. And the list of reporting local governments is Exhibit D in that agreement.
All right, our next question. Can you provide the deadline for the Purdue Sackler settlement sign-on?
Yes, it is September 30th, 2025. So, and I'll tell you that I expect that they will stick to that date. I've gotten reports from the national team that worked on the negotiation for this that they really fully expect that they'll want to stick to that date. So where other settlements may have been pushed a little bit, I don't think that the Purdue one will be. So September 30th.
All right, and based on today's presentation, it doesn't appear that much has changed except for the fiscal year 26 reporting requirement. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment. Yeah, I mean, I would say the other change that I would say that I think is fairly big is clarifying that local governments can get some guidance. And I hope that is a big deal for anyone who needs it.
All right, our next question. Please go over how to assign, I'm assuming, funds to the county again.
Sure. So the way that the payments are made is that there is a big trust and there's a national settlement administrator, right? So what they do is they take the money and they make the payments out to all the different governments all across the country. So they make those payments out to all of the local governments here in Michigan. So they have a process that, and you can email them if you want the person to email. I can give it to you in just a second here. You can either email them or they might. I think they also have a form that you can fill out as well. That you can just assign your share of money. It can be from 0% to 100% or anywhere in between to another participating local government. So say that you want to give 50% of your money to your county. So you would write down 50% and then you'd write down the county and then that's it. And you give it back to them and they do the math from there. I can tell you we have there's assigned people to each state. So ours, her name is Ashley Handy, and her email is ahandy, that's AHANDY @browngreer.com. Thanks, Annie.
All right, and it looks like our last question here is the Purdue Sackler settlement 2 agreements. We received notice about voting on the bankruptcy. Do the communities have 2 actions to complete?
Yeah, so it's a little bit that's partially why that this settlement is so complicated is because Purdue Pharmaceutical, the company, is going through a bankruptcy process, but the settlement with the Sackler family is a direct settlement with the Sackler family. So there's really 2 different settlements going on under one umbrella. And so the notice that you received about voting on the bankruptcy is about the Purdue Pharmaceutical bankruptcy. In bankruptcy cases, bankruptcy process is that you have to have a plan in place, like a bankruptcy plan in place. So in order to put that plan in place, there has to be a vote. And so that's what they were emailing you about with the voting. You don't have to vote. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. So to answer your question of do you have 2 actions to complete? You don't have to do both actions. You can if you want to, but the most important one is the DocuSign process where you sign the participation agreement that you received from, it would have been like Rubris or implementation manager. That's the most important one.
And we do have another question here. Does the county have to agree to accept the funds before notifying the national administrator? This seems to be a follow-up on the last question.
I don't believe so, but I'm not exactly sure. I don't believe they do. But I'm not 100% sure on that. That would be something that I would ask Brown Greer. And I might ask them that after this webinar.
All right.
So,
do you have any other questions?
we had that one earlier about Warren, right?
Yes, there's a few local governments listed in our chat here.
Yeah.
So we
If
had,
you want to read them off, I can tell you.
yes, absolutely. So City of Warren.
So Warren City has not completed their participation agreement.
Township of Hamburg.
Hamburg. Hamburg has completed. Hamburg is participating.
Livingston County.
Livingston County has completed its paperwork.
Chesterfield Township.
Chesterfield. Chesterfield has completed, so they're participating.
Muskegon Charter Township.
Muskegon Charter Township, right? Muskegon Charter Township is participating. They have already completed their paperwork.
Macomb Township.
Macomb Township is participating.
City of Fenton.
Fenton City, not Charter Township, right?
Correct.
Okay. Fenton City is participating. Fenton Township is participating too.
Clinton Township.
Clinton Township. Clinton Township is participating.
Niles Charter Township.
Niles. Niles Township has not completed their participation paperwork.
Holland Charter Township.
Holland has completed its paperwork. Holland Charter Township is participating. Holland City has not completed their paperwork yet.
Emmett Charter Township.
This is funny.
This is a hit.
I like it. Emmett Charter Township. Emmett Charter Township has not completed its paperwork.
Battle Creek.
Not completed its paperwork. Battle Creek has not participated yet.
Bridgeport Charter Township.
I do not have a match for Bridgeport. Do you know that Bridgeport is eligible? Or maybe not sure. I don't have Bridgeport listed as an eligible township.
Okay. I think we've got a few more in here.
Sure.
Brighton Charter Township.
Brighton Township has not completed its paperwork yet.
All right. And then, Matt, just to close out the circle, there was a question again about can counties endow or can recipients endow their money?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Let me get to that after we finish these local governments. Are there more, Amy?
I think that's all of them.
Oh, okay. So the short answer to the question is there's no prohibition against endowing. An endowment is okay. However, I will say that let me think about how to say this the right way. There are a lot of considerations that that go into deciding whether or not an endowment would be right for your local government and your situation. It's a very complicated thing, and 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 I guess I would just encourage you, if you were thinking about doing that, to really get a lot of advice and think about it a lot. One thing that I have heard is that the interest rates that you might get on endowed funds aren't very much more than what you might get in in just holding it. And so it can be, so that's part of where the complication comes. But yeah, you can endow your funds, but I will tell you that it can be rather complicated, and I would encourage you to really think about it and seek advice from a lot of different sources. Hopefully that answers the question in a way that is helpful.
Thank you, Matt. Well, that's kind of a perfect segue into our last few slides for today. So I just want to share with folks at the Michigan Association of Counties, we are able to provide support to you all through this process. So on our website, you'll be able to access information about technical assistance, our local government learning community, which is open to local government officials and designees, as well as our weekly office hours to check in and ask general questions. That's open to anyone interested in learning more about settlement funds. On our website, which I'll provide here in a second, we also have a list of templates, tools, guidance documents, a dashboard. I heard resolutions mentioned at multiple points. We have many template resolutions in our tools and templates section on our website, but happy to provide and customize any of those resources for your local government. And just wanting to provide our website, our opioid settlement resource center, as well as my contact information. So just for everyone's awareness, thank you again, Matt, so much for your time today and the overview and being able to answer questions for everyone. We have today's session recorded, and that recording will go out to all attendees as well as the slides. So we'll make sure that you have all of that information, especially for folks that were unable to attend today. But please reach out to us with any technical assistance related questions or support that's needed, and to Matt with any of those questions that he mentioned that they're able to help with. So thank you again, Matt. Really appreciate you being here, and thanks for everyone for attending today.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83.